We have a lot of stuff to cover. So this is something I've been waiting 30 years to teach. Not kidding. Not kidding. 30 years. Craig's got the paper if you haven't already got it. Now, good news is that the paper is online. It's in the bulletin. I mean, Sarah has done an amazing thing by creating all this stuff. She is absolutely amazing. Robbie's got an amazing thing by putting all this stuff up here and everything. I'm telling you, without these guys, nothing's going to happen. So let's go ahead and pray, please. Father, please give me boldness that I would be able to show people the reality that you alone are the created, that there is, it didn't just come about on its own, slapping you in the face. You're not just a deist that, Father, you're out there and just says, oh yeah, I'll let it go on its own, no big deal. Father, you are active. You are participating. You came to earth. You are doing things. That's the important thing. Father, so we commit this class to you, and please help us to understand it. In Jesus' name. So, all right, creation versus evolution. Interesting. By the way, Jeff's little thing here is actually perfect for this class. Past, present, and future. All right, before we get into this, evolution. Is it fact, like they tell you? Well, here, interesting thing is that this class is so important because I believe Christians really, really, really need to understand this stuff. Because what's happening is your kids, your grandkids, their kids, and kids and kids and kids are getting evolution in school. In Christian schools even. And I literally this was one of my citations on the new paper I was reading, and I literally just read this, and I'm like, oh, I just read this. Like right now. This comes from Freedom from Religion Foundation. Guess what they want to get rid of? All right, published 2017, and the title is Evolution and Atheism, Best Friends Forever. So guys, this is serious stuff. These guys do not believe in God. These guys want your kids, and I'm going to tell you, I know this to a fact, because the newest paper I'm writing for next week, let me tell you, these guys want nothing more than to get rid of religion completely. Even Christian schools are now teaching evolution. If you read my paper from one of my first papers from last week, the first thing I said was, my nephew in Messiah College, they sent him home with a thing to do, them and all the other kids out in the science class they were in. They sent him home and said, disprove evolution. You can't do it. That's what they said. And guess what the kids did? They didn't do it. They didn't even try. That's scary. Christian colleges. And I'm going to tell you, I read a recent post that out of 50 different, I think it was 35 or 50 different Christian colleges, most of the professors there, they're struggling to create a new culture so that kids in college will understand and believe in evolution. That's how serious this stuff is, guys. Christians, we've been doing this for too long. No, God did it. No, but that's what we're going to do today. We're going to go through this today, starting next, and I have this for 3 weeks. We're going to go through this, and I'm going to show you that life could not happen on its own. It didn't just pop out of nowhere. There was no sludge, and this thing just came about. I'm going to show you guys science. We're not going to be going through the Bible. We're going to science. Because who do you think you have to tell? What do you have to tell an evolutionist? If you tell him, well, God did it, what is he going to say? Whatever, you can't prove that. But what we're going to do to him is say, well, then neither can you. You can't prove it either. Because they can't. They can't. But we're going to show you why. Okay? We're not going to go... Now, please forgive me. I'm not saying that God's not important. The Bible... Of course he is. But the reality is that this is a scientific thing. In the beginning, Romans 1:20 says, from the God's invisible qualities, internal power, have been clearly seen, being understood from what is made. Meaning that science should go along with what God says. Science goes along with what God says. That's the key. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to go into science, and we're going to go and see that if this kind of happened on its own. All right, now, it's interesting. Scientists, just recently discovered this building. They stumbled across it. They found that it's 2 million years old. And they stumbled across it with everything. It had bathrooms in it. It had toilet fixtures. It had lights. It had fans. It had all these things. It was already built, but it was built 2 million years ago. Now, you think I'm a fool, which you're right. But the key is, that's what they're trying to tell you about life. But because they're using so much science, most people don't understand this. So we're going to do some little bit of biochemistry today, nothing tough. But we're going to go through this, and I'm going to show you how life could not have happened. So, think about it. We have Phil, we have Keith, we have other people who are builders, who are engineers. Michael's not here, but we have engineers of all this. The thing is, they know how things are built. So after this class, go to them and say, do you think this stuff could have been built on its own? I don't think so. All right. Now, Darwin and the monkey scopes trial. This was a problem for Christianity. 1925, I've mentioned in many of my other papers, mentioned in Christian history. The key is that in this time, there was in Tennessee, some evolutionist guy says, no, you need to allow me to teach evolution in schools. The court said, you're right, we do. But sadly, what happened, the Supreme Court overruled it and says, no evolution in schools. But instead, Christians saying, maybe we need to look into this thing and take a look and see if this stuff is really true, so we can prove it. What do you think Christians did? Woohoo, good, no more evolution, bye. So what happens in the 1960s, when they kicked God out of schools by taking prayer away and other things, what do you think replaced it? Anybody know who Carl Sagan is? Yeah, Mr. Evolution himself, he was a big part of that. Now they got rid of God, and now they're replacing with their God, which is evolution. But Christianity made a huge mistake because instead of doing something about it, they stood back and said, okay, yeah, that's it. Yeah, go God, you won. So, my journey into this class, 30 years ago, actually it was more than that. I was actually in Japan. I was listening to one of my most favorite speakers, Chuck Missler, and I started learning about creation versus evolution. But then when I got out and I went into science classes for the first time, I started struggling with it. I started thinking, well, is this evolution thing real? Is it really real? And I'm like, I was praying about it. But over time, I feel like God said, no, John, it's not real, and began to show me. And I started wanting, and ever since that point, all I wanted to do was come here to teach people about evolution and creation. So, what we'll not be going over, we will focus on human evolution only. We're not going to go over the Big Bang, the universe, Earth's age. That is my buddy Ryan's. Ryan is going to teach that. He is phenomenal, smart guy. He is much better to teach that than me. I am the guy with the human stuff, okay? Because I teach anatomy and physiology. So that's what we do. So we're going to look at that. Creation. Now, is it theory or law? Well, hopefully some of you guys read my papers. If you have not, please read these. I know they're kind of long, but I promise you they're going to go into all of this because I can't go more than 3 weeks. I've gave this guide to everybody. So they've have some copies. Do you have any left or is there? Okay, so I know that Sarah can get more. Yeah, we can get more of those. Also, they're online. And Robbie wanted me to remind everybody about the QR code. You can actually get the copies from online too. Absolutely, yes. Thank you. Exactly right. So please read these, because what I'm doing here is showing that what is the difference, what is a law? A law basically means you got to prove it. Okay. All right, my favorite guy. I love Judge Cedric Simpson. You guys know I watch lots of court stuff. And Judge Simpson, in a court, we were looking for things, and if the two lawyers were debating evolution, one would say evolution, life happened on its own. The other lawyer would say, I object, facts not found in evidence. There's no facts. There are no facts to prove evolution. We weren't there, number one. There's no written record, number two, and we cannot reproduce it, number three. So judge would say, I don't want to hear it if you can't prove it. Evolution cannot be proven, period, point blank, zero zilch, none, because we have to reproduce it. When you read my paper, this goes over all of it, please. And there's actually two papers. All right. So did it just show up on its own like the evolutionists say? Well, let's take a look at that. All right, this is what the Earth would have looked like before life. Okay, follow with me, people. This is important. Before life, it would have been here. This is Mars. Okay? Now, the key with Mars, if you can see, all there are is just rocks and dirt. Now, in Earth, there would be water. But the key is, there is nothing in there. There are no carbohydrates, no proteins, no lipids or fats, no DNA. Nothing was found in the soil. So how did life come about? Impossible. Let's keep going. This is soil picked up from life. It would look like this. This is stuff today. In this soil, we have all kinds of stuff. Nutrients, organic waste. Organic waste basically means life wastes. So every summer when the Amish stink us out of house and home when they're putting out their manure, what they're doing is replacing all the stuff from the soil with products of life. Someone breaks things down, something dies, their life spills out, new life can be built from it. Okay? New life comes from life. Life comes from life, but it didn't just come on its own. Because in the soil, we're looking like it would be just like this. There was nothing there to make it. Zero. It wasn't there. So we're going to talk about building some things. All right, soil would not exist. None of the products would be there. In the early Earth, there were no products. There were not. Just like today, if you go to the Sahara Desert or you go to the sand dunes in Colorado, you're not going to find any carbohydrates, no fats, no proteins, no DNA, nothing. How did life come out without those things? There's our problem. Water was also here, but water had nothing in it. It was just basic water. You hopefully, got some pure water, and that's all it was. All right, let's talk about what an organism is and what life is. An organism, this is mycoplasma. Mycoplasma is actually a very simple organism. Now, the evolutionists say it was just a simple organism and it just came out on its own. We have a problem with that because let's look at this guy. This is probably the most simplest organism on the planet. It has cytoplasm, has cellular stuff inside. This is basically cellular fluid. It has a three-layered cell membrane which has fat in it. By the way, all cells, including including plants and animals, all have fat. Every one of them has fat in the outside area. We'll get to that in a little bit. Soluble RNA or DNA. They have to have DNA in them. All plants have DNA. All life forms have DNA and RNA. All of them. Okay? Now, in my second paper that's also available, we talk about viruses which are not really alive. All right, ribosomes, which means they create proteins. So all of these things. So what does it mean to be alive? Utilizes and stores energy. We have to be able to take on energy, use that energy, and store it. Okay? We've got to be able to do that. You have to eat. That's what it means. Now, I know this is going fast, and forgive me, but Robbie's also making a video of it, so you got to take care of it. You can watch it 3 or 4 times if you want. All right. Next, protecting itself from the environment. That's what the fat in there. The fat within the cell membrane. Fat's there, keeps water out. Fat's there, keeps water out. Everything has fat in it. It also needs to reproduce itself. It has to have the ability to create new life. So are you getting the picture that these are pretty complex? Oh, we haven't even started yet. All right, if I took a Lego box, and I had my Lego box sitting at home, and actually I have a Lego box, and I forgot it. Darn it. If you see the Lego boxes, you take the Lego stuff in the Lego box, you shake it up, or you take, let's say, a jigsaw puzzle of 1,000 pieces, you take it and shake it out, and you throw it out. So how many times does it come perfectly put together? How often does that happen? Well, wait a minute. Evolution says cells came about on its own. Yeah. Think about it. You shake this. Now look at the inside this. Look at the second one with the little the Japanese stuff on there. I love that because I lived in Japan. It was kind of cool. So all that stuff was put in there. So they're telling you that's the same thing just like a cell. It has all these components. It just came about on its own, they say. How the heck did that happen? It's just like taking this box. And to be honest, this Lego boxes, these both have about 500 or 600 pieces. Let me tell you something. Cells are way more complex than this. These are nothing. And if these don't come about on their own, all right, let's talk about carbohydrates. Now, I don't care if you understand the aspects of all this. All I want you to see is that these bad boys are built. They don't just come you just don't just go dig them up and you throw hydrogen, carbon, and oxygen, and all of a sudden there it is. And these are simple stuff. This is simple stuff, but even these are not naturally occurring. Sugars are not naturally occurring in nature. Polysaccharides, which is what animals are made from. Okay, starches. Cellulose, which actually is fiber. Can you see that these things are built? They're highly complex. The evolutionists want you to believe this stuff just comes about on its own, but here's the problem. If I go to the Sahara Desert and I pick up the sand and I go like this, you think I'm going to find any of this stuff? No, because it's built. You kind of see the word creator coming into here? Creator? Yeah. All right. Symbiosis. Now here's another thing. Plant and animal symbiosis. Symbiosis means one lives because of the other. We live together. So for instance, in our body there's about 1,000 different species of bacteria. We need that bacteria. We live because of that bacteria, and they live because of us. So the thing is, plant and animal symbiosis means that plants need animals. Animals need plants, not just to eat. But here's what will happen if you have one without the other. If plants just came about, plants, when they take in sunlight and they also use energy, they create oxygen. Plants create oxygen. Okay, who's the smart guy in here? What would happen if we had too much oxygen? What would it turn to? Anybody? No, hypoxia is without oxygen. It's hypoxia. Yeah, but what would it turn to? There's a component, ozone, O3. It would turn to ozone, and we would have too much of it, and now you have a life in which the Earth would die because too much oxygen. Now let's forget let's look at the plants. I mean the animals. All animals, they get rid of carbon dioxide. Okay? Plants need carbon dioxide. We need their oxygen. If animals came without plants, what planet would we be just like? Venus, yes! Anybody know how many degrees Venus sits at a normal day? 900, yes. Because of the greenhouse effect due to carbon dioxide. Basically, one couldn't exist without the other. So if one came first and the other did not come, we got a problem. See a creator in this? All right, we're not even talking about life at this point. All right, most plants use starches for structure. So when we eat plants, we take in their, like let's say a carrot or corn or wheat or rice or even an apple. We're taking in their energy and we're utilizing it. So we need them. So it's a symbiotic relationship. We've got to have them. One could not exist without the other. So, okay, let's talk about what that cell membrane, the thing that surrounds the cell. The thing that surrounds the cell. All right, the cell membrane is important. Does anybody know what the name of this is? It starts with a P. Anybody, any smart person know the name of the what's called around it? No, protoplasm is actually what's inside. No, phospholipid bilayer. You're like, oh, yeah, I knew that. Yeah, phospholipid bilayer. Come on. That was an easy one. You know, Alex, I'd like phospholipid bilayer for 10,000, please. So the thing is, the problem is, this has fat. Fat inside, fat outside. What happens when you drop oil in water? What happens to it? Separates. Okay, when you get your salad dressing, you got to shake it up because oil and water don't mix. That's why every cell in the world, everyone needs to have fat in it because it is what we call hydrophobic. Doesn't like water. But then again, if we put a cell in here and it sucks the water, it would explode. It would die. So it has to have the ability to keep the water out. So now, do you think fats are naturally found? If I go out to the sand dunes in Colorado, would I find fats out there in the soil? No. Fats are not naturally found. So already, two of the components are not naturally found. How in the heck did they get here then? Fats do not exist without life. This is a triglyceride. Now, again, can you see that it is built? Can you see that there's a structure here? Anybody who builds things knows that there's a structure. There's ways of doing things. We've got to have a way to build things. I mean, that clock back there, it didn't just come on its own. There are mechanisms inside it that need to be built. Because you don't see clocks naturally occurring in society. Well, you do. I guess we go to a clock manufacturer. But outside of that, To break down fats, here's the other problem. To break down the fats, and also to break down carbohydrates and everything else, there are other substances that are needed because if you take this, you got to be able to break it down. And the only thing that can break those things down are usually enzymes. Or it takes like 10,000 years on its own. Enzyme can do it in less than a millisecond. Enzymes, which means life has to create these other products. Enzymes are needed to break these guys down. Enzymes. And do you think you can go out and find enzymes in the Sahara Desert? Oh, hey, there's a couple enzymes right there. Hey, you just come over, trip over. Oh, I tripped over an enzyme. I mean, that's craziness. You can't find those out there, but they're needed. These cells got to have them. DNA and RNA. Now, if you think the other guys are complex, we haven't seen nothing yet. That's complex. All life has DNA and RNA in it. How the heck did that bad boy get built out of nothing? All life has this. All. A-L-L. A-L-L. All. Okay. So what do we use DNA or RNA for? Well, they specifically code for amino acids. What do amino acids make? Proteins. Very good. Protein. Amino acids make proteins. So amino acids. Now, I will say that there are a few amino acids that are naturally occurring. They've actually found some in meteors. But all that shows is that they're very simple subject things. Let me show you. They're pretty simple. You can look at them. Each of those little guys are not very much going on there. Some of them are naturally occurring. But the key is not all of them are. We have to create some. But these 20, we have to eat. We have to eat proteins. Why? Because we need those guys. Without proteins, without these guys, we wouldn't make proteins. And what do proteins create? Everything. Protein, here's human insulin. Jackie knows all about human insulin. Okay? Much better than beef and pork, right? Absolutely. Yep. So, human insulin. Now, now remember, we are building coding for amino acids. Every single one of these guys are a different amino acid put in a different specific place, bound together by other linking things. Do you really think that if we took a bunch of amino acids and threw it out, it's going to come just like this? Now, we can't even create stuff that way. This even gets more complex than this. But let me tell you, this stuff just doesn't come about on its own. Okay? One protein does not come out. And see, here's the thing about science. Now, the problem with evolution is they just say this stuff happened on its own. But do you think in science we can create a protein without life? Do you think we can actually manufacture proteins? Yeah, Tom's shaking his head and he's exactly right. We cannot manufacture proteins. Proteins just don't come on their own. It's impossible. We can't even make them in the laboratory. We cannot make proteins. So how are you trying to tell me, how can you expect me to believe you if you say these proteins just came about on their own when you can't even prove it? What was that, Jackie? Well, the fish actually had a lot more than just protein in them, you know. But the key is their thing is this: these guys cannot do this. We cannot prove it. The Golgi apparatus. Once the proteins are put together, this is UPS. Now they could say, what came first, the UPS or the Postal Service? Well, I think it's UPS because somehow they got in there. UPS is the Golgi apparatus. What happens is when a protein is finished, it needs to go to a packaging department in the cell called the Golgi, and that part of that packages it up and adds certain things to it. Okay? Interesting thing enough, if anybody here is diabetics, other than my sister, that the hemoglobin A1C, there is a percentage of sugar added to the end of it. Hemoglobin A1C is a protein. Sugar's added to the end of it. Because without it, it doesn't function. So not only does some... Actually, yeah, okay, yeah. That's true. Now, so the key is you cannot form a protein in science. What we're buying is animal milk or plant protein, already made. Absolutely. Exactly. It's a great question. So it has a natural origin. It's not created. Plant protein, so it's either whey protein. Oh. Mm-hmm. So you're right, and we're going to just, give me just a second, we're going to get into that, but you're right, but the key is, a simpler way to put that is, there is tons of different stuff that needs, so let's get to the next one. How many different proteins do organisms have? So Cerevisiae cerevisiae, which is brewer's yeast, and also baker's yeast, is basically baker's yeast, and so it has, you're saying that one protein, right? Well, this bad boy has 200. Now, this is just a single organism. This bad boy has, and this is the simplest I found. The simplest has 200 different ones. So, even if they could create one, which it can't be because we still can't do it. If we can't create it in the laboratory, it's not going to happen. If you can't even create one, then you're missing 199 more. And that's just proteins. That doesn't mean carbohydrates. That doesn't mean fats. That doesn't mean DNA. That doesn't mean RNA. That doesn't mean enzymes. Yes, ma'am?
So what do you mean by creatable proteins?
Meaning it has to create its own proteins. Everybody creates their own. We have to create our own proteins. And to have an organism with anything in it, this one little yeast has 200 of its own. And that's the simplest one out there. 200 proteins. How the heck, if you can't even make one in the laboratory, do you expect me to believe that 200 of them came out on their own? Proteins must be made. They are not naturally occurring. Our DNA makes proteins. Yes, sir?
Which is what they're saying is evolutionary theory. Because now they can actually occur, but that's because life already creates it.
Exactly.
If you take life away and you take a sterile environment, none of these things exist on their own, and the randomness just builds on top of the complexity of
Come on, lift them up. Woohoo!
more randomness on more randomness. So they're basically saying not only do you have to shape that one puzzle up and it comes out exactly right, and you can't just do it once, because you have to have more than one cell so they can all start relating with each other and cross.
Because remember, even if one cell made it, if they died, it's gone. But it's which is not going to happen.
200 times the simplest creature.
Well, no, actually 200. Now, each shake has to make its own protein.
Exactly.
And this have to do 200.
Randomly make 200 proteins.
Mm-hmm.
They all have to write plus you have
Absolutely.
fats, enzymes, everything.
Carbohydrates, DNA.
And then that just happens to happen, and then that one dies and there's no more.
Well, we can't even, the key is we can't even do that. Go ahead, sir. Mm-hmm. Right. Because they're, which has protein in it. Mm-hmm. So yes, we can create a few different amino acids, but most of what we take comes from protein that we eat, which is, like you're just saying, the stuff you buy, the protein stuff. But those are all life made. Those are life made. So we got to think about this. This is life. We cannot, if we can't even prove in the laboratory that we can make even one of these things, not to mention all four of them and hundreds more things other, they expect us, and they're calling us foolish to believe that. They're saying you guys are fools for believing this. Are we fools?
I think that their solution is super incredibly miraculous.
Yeah, I believe it does take more faith to believe evolutionists. Absolutely. But that's, now, just so you know, next week, that's what we're going to be dealing with. How do they teach it in a way that makes everybody believe it, even though there are no facts? How do they do it? And next week, that's what we're going to say. Go ahead, sir.
I was just going to say, so we go back to the beginning of your class. So we have a system, basically it's a system
Nope, it does not. Nope.
And yet, they want you to believe it's true in science because they say so.
Right. And, well, again, like I said, we're going to deal with that next week on how they're doing it. Because the scary, see, guys, I want you, one of the things this class I was hoping you guys would see through this is how scary this stuff is. Because just last night, you know me, I'm like constantly, and I study this stuff, I study like for billions of hours, but I was reading last night, and they were saying, the latest polls, that more than 50% of Americans believe in evolution. How can they get them dupes like that without them being very, very good at it? So now this first paper, when it comes to theory and law, this is important because what I'm telling you, if you want to prove something in science, you've got to do it this way. I actually go into two very specific things of proving a law of science, and it goes very, good news is no math, a little bit of not much science, so for everybody, it's required reading for everybody. So, but that's the key. Now, in the second paper I go into that I need you guys to read before next week, also is about this stuff, but also I go into more detail. Like, for instance, they say it comes from space. So I go into how space travel, is it really possible? Can we do this? Does it live in space? We go into all that. So the first and second, now I know that's a lot of reading, but I promise you it will be rewarding. All right, so evolutionists believe that this bad boy was created on its own. If you think about it, this is exactly what evolutionists are doing. So we have fans in that building. I mean, because you guys know, you guys just stumbled across this when I was 2 million years old, and it was all built. But the key is, guys, that's what they want you to think, is that it's all built, it just happens on its own. Now, just so you know, many of the evolutionists know that what they're teaching is not provable, okay? But they're not going to tell you that. But let me tell you, there must be a burning question. I know the burning question in this. We're just about finished with this, but there must be a burning question with everybody. Then, why do they believe it? No, not money. Well, it does, but here's the key. This is the key. Because when I was praying for this class for months, I felt the Lord just bring me back to the same thing over and over and over. Outside of a God, it had to have happened somehow. If God didn't create it, somehow it got here, and we'll eventually come to understand how it is. That's the idea of evolution. They take God out of the picture, as much as it's ludicrous, because there's no other way. Only a creator could have done this. But if you take God out of the picture, then we see, what was his name? Jeff, what was his last name? In Jurassic Park. Anyway, he was like, life will find a way. Yeah. And then you just always hear and for some reason, every time I think about that, I always think of the Monty Python in Search of the Holy Grail. They're all the life will find a way. That's what it's like. But the reality is that's the idea of evolution. But see, that's why I'm telling you guys about this, that when you're dealing with, things like, when you're dealing with freedom from religion, and they're telling you evolution and atheism, best friends forever, guys, that's the problem. And it's not for you guys. I know you guys have great faith in God. It's for your kids. Because let me tell you, just 1 second, Paul. Let me tell you, Christian colleges are teaching this. And many Christian professors in colleges, saying, well, they're trying to, and there's these new papers out that they're trying to change the culture in Christian colleges so they can accept it easier. There's work on that. That's scary. Yes, sir.
To me, it always goes back to Ephesians 5, where it talks about the battle we fight is not against flesh and blood.
Oh, absolutely.
We have to recognize that
Oh, 100%. And then we're going to get to that next week, yes.
All the things that we see going on, whether it's evolution,
Absolutely.
various other things, it's all about, you got to get
Yes. And that's, to be honest, Phil, what do you call it? Sorry, I'm looking at Phil. To be honest, Paul, that verse has been on my heart a lot. It is evil. Yeah, yes, sir, go ahead. I'll look at you. No.
Now, I think a parent, when I was a young man, there was a man in Europe trying to get God out of the picture. His name was Hitler. Study our own country and study Mr. Ford. Teaching all the same stuff.
Yeah. And you know, sir, the thing is, my paper for next week is going to be dealing exactly with that. How evolution and many of the communism, Nazism, how they've linked together. How our government is actually linked together with evolutionists. Because the idea, that's what it is. Because those guys are hardcore communists, Nazis, they were hardcore evolutionists. And they talked about survival of the fittest, which we'll go into in my paper next week and go into the third week. All right, go ahead.
I was going to say, sometimes we don't understand where people are coming from, but we have to understand that a belief system is based on multiple factors. The home environment, the educational environment, the government, so on and so forth. So while we don't understand why people believe in evolution, we have to understand where they're coming from.
Oh, absolutely.
To find out how they even believe this. It's also by being cognizant of that we know how as Christians we need to approach it. We need to approach when the kids are in school. We need to speak out when we start.
Right.
We need to get it at the core. And I had a very good friend who was born and raised in Cuba. And she said that when she was small, the government would say, do you want an ice cream cone? Yes. Well, is God going to give you an ice cream cone? Let's have God give you an ice cream cone. And then the ice cream cone never came about.
Right.
But then when the child got an ice cream cone, they say, God didn't give you this, Fidel Castro gave you this.
Yes.
And so
And now they begin to worship Fidel Castro. Yep.
and she believed that Fidel Castro was their God. And so those are things that we need to address as a community,
We do.
get that line of thinking.
And that's exactly what I'm doing in the third week. We're going to be talking about the evolution and of religion. But guys, and don't get me wrong, I agree with you that the evolutionists they don't know any different. But the reality is, I'm only telling you guys, and I'm making such a big deal of this so that Christians can begin to wake up and see that there is a big problem. It's massive, and it is in our schools. And even when I was in 10th grade, my science teacher was like, 1983 or whatever, Miss Muth. She was a hardcore evolutionist. I remember even then. And that's only 20 years after they brought it in again. The key is, guys, we need to, and it's not for you. This is why I wanted so many people to come to this class, because I want you to tell your kids and share this stuff and share this video or whatever else you need to do for your kids, because they need to know prior to going into this stuff that, hey, they're going to tell you this junk, but it's not proven. Yes, sir?
I think what you're getting at here is Satan is the great deceiver.
Absolutely.
And he's insidious and he's slow to play the long game. And so he brings this stuff in. And so we're told throughout Scripture to be equipped to handle the word accurately. We don't give reason to defend the faith that we believe in. And so this seems like science, but like you said at the beginning of the class, science and God go hand in hand.
They do, absolutely.
Christians need to equip themselves so that they can give an answer for the hope of life to them. And this type of thing is part of that, making an argument for the faith. No, you're not going chapter and verse, but you can show this is why we believe what we believe.
Oh, and I agree. No, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I don't want to use the Bible, because absolutely, the first verse I did.
That's what I'm saying. No, I'm just saying the stuff you're presenting is good because it's tools we can use when you have a conversation.
Absolutely. Because the key is, guys, is that, we just need to equip people. Now, but the thing is, I also found that we know that this thing with this guy right here evolved. Well, let me show you where it came from. It came from that sea monster right there. Yep, building came from that sea creature. All right, any other questions?
Hey, John.
Sir?
I just want to show people real quick. If you go out to the church website and click on resources at the top, you'll be brought to this page. Scroll down and you'll find links to some of these classes. If you click on Conflict Christianity, you will see the links here to the PowerPoint, the handout, and the YouTube video we have.
Isn't he amazing? He's amazing. Go, Robbie! Because let me tell you, I couldn't. Any other questions, guys? All right. Please, please, please make sure you read the papers.